Hello everyone, I'm Robert Hubbs and welcome to a Diehard Gamefan review of Sublevel Zero. Developed by Sigtrap Games and published by Mastertronic, Sublevel Zero is a game that pays homage to the 1990s 3D game Descent. In Sublevel Zero, you pilot a spaceship that usually goes around digging for ancient alien technology. You find yourself inside a space station and suddenly you are whisked away to an unknown part of the galaxy, and it is your job to dig deeper into the space station to find your way out. Just like Descent, Sublevel Zero is a zero-gravity space action game with 6 degrees of free movement. This means you can literally fly all over the place in any direction you are facing. The game gives you the option of playing a training level that teaches you how to control your ship, manage your inventory, use the crafting system, and how to navigate each level. Controlling your ship in Sublevel Zero is rather easy once you get the hang of the controls. You can either use a controller or the mouse and keyboard combo. The later is actually the most comfortable way to play Sublevel Zero, as it's so much easier to maneuver your ship. You can play the game just like a standard first-person shooter, with the mouse being used for looking around and firing off your weapons. The keyboard is obviously for standard movements like moving forward, strafing, rotating, rising or lowering your ship. For the most part, the ship controls are very responsive, allowing you to easily zip around the zero-G environments. It's very easy to make turns around tight corners, flip and rotate your ship, and dodge most incoming enemy fire. However, due to the speed at which you move around, along with the claustrophobic level designs and certain graphical textures, it's very easy to get disoriented while playing. Another thing that adds to the disorientation is how the ship randomly rotates when making simple movements. I could be moving sideways around a pillar and suddenly my ship rotates 90 degrees. Something like that doesn't seem to make sense for a simple movement, whereas flying down a corridor that rotates and your ship matches it does. Now, the levels in the game are all randomly generated, which gives it a fresh experience every time you play. It does rely on using set rooms and corridors and then randomly dispersing them. A lot of the generated levels can be incredibly small, allowing very little space for maneuverability. There are some larger rooms spread throughout that offer plenty of free movement, making it easier to dodge enemy attacks. Some of the larger rooms also tend to have big obstacles that can be used as temporary cover, like columns, force fields, and even generators. Unfortunately, some areas in each level can again disorientate you. Some of the larger rooms, most particularly the mining cavern areas, tend to have very tiny openings that you can literally fly past several times and not notice. Even with the help of the 3D holo map, it can still be jarring to even make sure you are flying in the right direction. It does take some getting used to, and even when you think you have the hang of the layout, you still find yourself easily turned around. Aside from navigating and flying around the zero-G environment, there is plenty of combat to be had. There's a whole assortment of enemy drones that come after you with quite a unique arsenal. You have basic bots that just slowly fly your way, firing intermittently, ships that ram you full speed, railgun sniper-like drones, and even kamikaze drones. There is an issue in regards to enemy encounters that I eventually discovered. For my first few hours of play, enemy placements made sense, as I would encounter large groups in either large rooms or at the generator room. You would also encounter 1 or 2 new droids every level. Then after a few hours of playing, enemy placement became erratic and made little sense. The drones that I first encountered in level 3 I'm now running into on level 1, and I'm now finding myself quickly getting frustrated earlier in the game than anticipated. Now, some would consider this a way for the game to feel fresh and keep players on their toes every time you start a new game. I find this to be a poorly implemented system and a way of just extending the lifespan of a rather short game. As a matter of fact, Sublevel Zero doesn't allow you to adjust the difficulty of the game at all to make it easier or harder. That's because Sublevel Zero is a roguelike game. These are games where you only get one life, and if you die, you start from the very beginning. I'm not a fan of roguelike games, and I've always felt that it would be better off as a difficulty selection for hardcore gamers that really want to challenge themselves. Now, aside from my feelings about the game's difficulty and enemy encounters, there are a couple things I do like. The first is a crafting system that allows you to upgrade various parts of your ship and weapons to help you along your journey throughout the game. As you zip around the levels, you'll be able to collect salvageable ship parts and weapons that you can use to upgrade existing parts or create new ones. In order to make upgrades or new parts, you need to also collect enough nanites, which is the game's currency. Once you have enough, you can go ahead and make a new ship hull, which can increase your hit points, carry more ammo and inventory space, or you can upgrade your autocannon to a minigun which has increased firing rates in exchange for doing less damage. One of the things Sublevel Zero teaches you early on is inventory management, as you have very limited inventory space. This means you can only carry a certain number of health items, missiles, guns, ship hulls, etc. Sometimes you'll have to make hard decisions of just letting stuff go in order to save space for something more important. With the crafting system, it is very much possible to increase your inventory space, but it's not a very significant increase. Another thing I really liked about Sublevel Zero is the music. Hands down, this is the best thing about the game. The moment you hear the menu screen music, you will get sucked in. I love the vibe from the music for each level as it creates a very fitting ambience to the environment. I could literally just sit there and listen to the soundtrack all day. The music is composed by Will Bedford, who only wrote music for 2 other games. If the impressive work he did here for Sublevel Zero is any kind of indication, he might become a household name someday. Now I want to talk about the graphical presentation, which to me is a mixed bag. Sublevel Zero has a very retro look to it, with its low-level polygon count environments and minimal textures, making it look like a game that came out of the mid-90s. This works for it and against it simultaneously. With the low-quality textures and polygon count, the game runs incredibly smooth and blazingly fast. The level designs are creative looking with a decent amount of detail that gives off the feeling of an abandoned space station. This is where all the positives end, unfortunately. While I respect the hard work that went into making Sublevel Zero look like a mid-90s 3D title, it actually works against the game as well. As already stated, the game's speed and randomized layouts can easily disorientate anyone just flying around. Now, if you mix in some of the minimal textures with these elements, you can easily become nauseous. The mining caverns, which all have rock surfaces, are some of the most blandest textures I've ever seen. The patterns constantly repeat to the point where the walls blend together, making it hard to navigate. There's also some questionable lighting effects in the game. There are usually a series of grates, force fields, and lava pits that seem to give off quite a glow. The blooming effects from these are incredibly distracting. Other things like rooms with glowing blue crystals don't seem to affect the rooms that you're in. Places like long corridors, rooms with barriers, or dead ends also seem to have the same kind of lighting effects regardless of the source. It seems like every room is well lit to the point that you have to ask why even include these effects if they don't really enhance their environment. The final thing I want to mention is the replayability of Sublevel Zero. As mentioned before, there is the randomly generated level layouts and the roguelike difficulty settings. I've already shared my thoughts on those earlier. Now there is the game's length, which isn't that long. You have a total of 6 levels, 7 if you include the tutorial, and you can beat them within 3 to 4 hours. Along the way there are a bunch of unlockables ranging from progressive rewards and upgrades between levels to unlocking brand new ships. You are usually presented with these 3 options between stages that are only available if you collect enough nanites, but you can only pick one. These interesting rewards usually are double-edged swords, offering some kind of buff but debuffing other stats as well. Now, acquiring new ships have some harder requirements to meet in order to be unlocked. Some requirements have you killing 300 enemies with only plasma weapons, or taking enough damage without dying, then completing the stage. Now, while it may feel great accomplishing these feats to get a new ship, they aren't that much different from your default ship. The newer ships only have slightly improved stats, and that's about it. However, if you just like to unlock things for the sake of doing so, well then this is the game for you. My final thoughts on Sublevel Zero come down to this. What we truly have here is a game built from the ground up to pay homage to the Descent games. It was designed to look, play, and feel just like the classic franchise. The game controls feel great and respond very well. The music is top-notch and probably one of my favorite indie game soundtracks. The crafting system is very unique, and the reward system and unlockables are something that will keep bringing people back. Of course, there are some issues with some of the game's layouts and enemy placements. The graphics, even though they capture the essence of mid-90s 3D, can be pretty hard on the eyes. Also, the game's roguelike difficulty is not something I'm a fan of, and would have preferred something more traditional like a setting choice. This might be the one thing that might either put people off, or keep them coming back for more. Overall, despite the things I take issue with, Sublevel Zero is a solid game that I can at least recommend checking out. This is Robert Hubbs of Diehard Gamefan, and thank you for checking out this review of Sublevel Zero.